Hello, I'm Carol Graham. I'm here to talk about my new book, The Power of Hope: How Wellbeing Science Can Save Us from Despair. Um, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in it and a little bit about what led to it in a very short time. So, first of all, I was one of the few crazy people that worked on happiness and emotions and feelings in economics beginning about 2 decades ago. At the time, it was not taken very seriously, but right now it is indeed very much a part of a subfield in economics. It's in government policy in the UK and New Zealand. Even the US now is collecting some metrics of well-being in its official surveys. So we've made some progress, and it's exciting field that combines economics, obviously, but also biology, some of the other medical sciences, psychology, and more. So I started working just on happiness, life satisfaction issues in poor countries. Um, but over time, I've been more and more focused on hope as one of the most important metrics of well-being, as the book does. And I guess the obvious question is why? Why sort of after 2 decades shift suddenly? I wouldn't say suddenly, but shift. And also I shifted much more to focus on the US as opposed to Latin America, where I'm from, and other poor and developing countries. So the big question for both those things is why. And one is that the US in particular, but many other countries, are facing high levels of despair, a mental health crisis, um, and in the US, a crisis of deaths of despair as well, because individuals have essentially lost hope in their futures. Now, that doesn't sound very much like economics, but yet it matters a lot. Hope is key to aspirations. It's key to future investment, for example, in education, in your own health, in your occupational skills, in so much more. And without hope, we can't expect people will be able to come out of poverty, rejoin the workforce. We have almost 20% of prime age males in the US who have literally dropped out of the labor force permanently, even though they're still a prime age. And it's a big problem, both because it's a drag on our productivity, but also because they are in very poor health and they have no hope. And then finally, despair is also a channel to misinformation. People in despair are much more vulnerable to fake news, to conspiracy theories and radicalization. And it's a very big concern for both the health of our society, but also our civil society. Um, and then finally, I focus mainly not only on the importance of this for the young, because the young are facing uncertain labor markets, they're facing unprecedented lifestyle changes, such as happened during COVID. There's threats to world peace. They're very divided politics. It's really hard to be a young adult right now and think about what's next, which direction to go. And it's even harder if one does not know what's happening to changing labor markets, like a lot of young people with less education and low income tend to have. So a lot of two chapters in the book are surveys of young people, and they show how the young with hope tend to have much better future outcomes in the education realm and ultimately in the labor market realm, and how young people without hope tend to have far worse outcomes, take on much more risky behavior that jeopardizes their future and their future health. So we realize by now that hope is important, but then how to fix it? Another big why, right? Why and how? Restoring hope is not an obvious question for policymakers, and yet it's increasingly important in my view. And so what I do in the last part of the book is provide some insights and lessons from the science of well-being, which, among other things, highlight the kinds of things that can help restore hope. Part of that is, highlights the critical role of involving communities, entire communities in the process. It's not just an individual problem. In the same way, communities are increasingly getting involved successfully and helping provide peer support for mental health treatment and problems and interventions. It also highlights, particularly for the young, the critical importance of mentors, because young people do not have an idea of what the labor markets of today will bring, and they are not prepared skill-wise. It does not mean they have to go to college, but they need to acquire socio-emotional, cognitive, and other skills that are not taught in public high schools. And so without those skills, they might be the next generation in despair. So with that, I hope you at least enjoy reading the book, and even better, find it useful as we think about how to equip people, and in particular young people, to survive in the future, a very uncertain future, and in particular for young people to thrive and have good lives and avoid being another generation in despair.